The program you are about to see may shock you. You may even find it unbelievable. Yet the facts are indisputable and have been substantiated from well-researched and reliable resources. Any conclusion drawn by the viewer must be validated with their own research. All of this program's content is presented for educational purposes only. Check with a qualified health professional before making any lifestyle or dietary changes.
Do diseases of civilization really have a cure? If you knew your food and lifestyle choices were making you sick, would you change? Healthcare costs today are skyrocketing and accelerating out of control. Are you paying to die? From a distance, our world looks beautiful, but we know man's impact on planet Earth is devastating. She continually tries to correct herself, but the damage continues. Mother Earth cries out through her soils, and the root is scarier than you think. We are now in the eye of the storm and losing ground fast. We spend billions of dollars looking to the sky, while big companies are making billions of dollars undermining our health and our children. We know that diet plays an important role in the overall health of our lives, but what if we're living a lie? A lie told between two truths is often believed. And even though we know that refined sugars and fast foods shorten our lifespan, we think that exercise and a pill will fix it. Eat low fat because fat kills is what we hear. But the synthetic chemicals that are being put in our foods kill much more effectively. And we don't seem to care about how they're being produced. Are we really living longer? Or are the statistics being skewed because of a reduction in infant mortality? The next generation will not be the last generation to start dying earlier if we don't do something now. Through man's innovation, he has created foods that look good, but could be making us sick. And no one is saying a word as we continue to spin out of control. The things we trust in our everyday lives can no longer be trusted because things are not what they seem to be. What are the consequences of genetically modified food? And why do some countries forbid the sale of these potentially damaging foods? Diabetes alone is costing the American people $174 billion this year. Twice what it cost in 1995. Governments back companies that profit from keeping us sick. These companies have spent billions of dollars convincing an unaware public that a cure is just around the corner and that a pill or treatment will fix us. Degenerative diseases like heart disease, diabetes, arthritis, AIDS, and cancer are sweeping the world at an alarming rate.
Let's go back to the 1st century BC to a tiny kingdom called Phrygia. It is in Phrygia that there was a philosopher by the name of Epictetus. It is Epictetus that said that appearances are of 4 kinds. They are either as they appear to be, or they neither are nor appear to be, or they are but do not appear to be, or they are not and yet appear to be. It is this last one that we are concerned with today. They are not and yet appear to be. If Epictetus were alive today, he would probably be a Harvard professor of advertising. Epictetus took a single concept or idea, but by the time he was done, he had us completely baffled. And this is so commonly done by the experts today. If there's anything in the world that is deceiving, it is what we are led to believe by the major media groups, and how they are shaping our belief system and creating illusory benefits that have the appearance of coming from man-made foods, but are actually destructive to our health. It is, as Epictetus said, they are not, and yet appear to be.
Just look at modern heart disease. In 1921, the first death caused by myocardial infarction was recorded in the United States. And in 1930, 3,000 deaths were recorded. And in 1960, 500,000 US deaths were recorded. And the numbers continue to increase all around the world.
49.1% of women are obese, and the figure stands at 35.55 for men. Now here's an interesting statistic. 64% of overweight men felt that they were the right weight, and 41.6% of the women felt they were also at the correct weight. What's going on here? The health problems and issues the world faces today is unprecedented. In less than 100 years, a new array of diseases has emerged primarily due to man's ignorance and greed. Although a world problem, the Bahamas particularly is being affected. Medical practice as practiced today, based on the superstition of materialism, does nothing to address the overall mortality of a given population. In fact, in the United States, science can't seem to put together enough sound research to stop the scourge of heart disease. Is it any accident that over 26% of the American population has some form of diagnosed heart disease? Over 7% has diabetes, and cancer is striking 1 out of 3. Iatrogenic disease, or disease caused from inappropriately prescribed drugs and modern medical procedures, is the third leading cause of death, killing more people every year than all acts of terrorism, war-related activities, traffic accidents, and industrial accidents put together. Science and technology will not find a cure for the diseases of modern civilization, because there is no cure. Diabetes and cancer cannot be cured by some magical bullet or potion. Only through a deeper understanding of our roots, of where we came from. In our natural traditions, will we find the wisdom that has kept us alive for millennia. In the Caribbean, the problem is the same or worse. And in the Bahamas, chronic non-communicable diseases of civilization cause over 50% of all deaths. If the truth was made available that would solve today's health issues, would the public embrace the solution? The first issue is to recognize that the lifestyle that most people are embracing is conducive to early degeneration and suffering. The second goal is to provide a healthy lifestyle model that can be integrated into each family, community, city, and country. What's really behind this current health crisis? What and who are the major culprits? The key factors involved that currently are sowing the seeds that result in premature degeneration, such as heart disease, diabetes, arthritis, cancer, and a host of other autoimmune diseases. Everyone knows that diet plays a key role, but the solution diet, or the politically correct diet, is actually exacerbating the problem. The new and politically correct diet solution and many newly created drugs are actually causing problems potentially more serious than the initial health issue.
So, what do we believe? We're being told to eat low-fat butters, margarines, or spreads with hydrogenated oils, and it's these very oils that cause many more health problems. We're being told to use vegetable oils like corn oil and canola oil that have polyunsaturated oils that increase cancer, heart disease, premature aging, and many more diseases. Nearly all the rancid oils in commercial dressings are from processed vegetable oils and are a contributor to the health crisis. Cholesterol-free is worse than the cholesterol they're trying to keep from you. Bad fats are all partially hydrogenated fats, including margarine and shortening in processed foods. Industrially processed vegetable oils, especially soy, safflower, corn, cottonseed, and canola are very destructive. All fats, especially polyunsaturated oils, heated to high temperatures, are bad. If we continue to consume polyunsaturated oils, here's the list you look forward to: increased cancer, increased heart disease, premature aging, depressed learning ability, liver damage, digestive disorders, impaired growth, and lowered cholesterol. And what about the 1965 study on fats that, when ignored, that divided patients who already had heart attacks into 3 groups: polyunsaturated corn oil, monounsaturated olive oil, and saturated animal fats? The corn oil group had 30% lower cholesterol, but only 52% were alive after 2 years. The olive oil group had 57% alive after 2 years, and the animal fat group had 75% alive after 2 years. Lower cholesterol doesn't mean a longer life, yet that's what is constantly being implied. The total content of traditional diets varies from 30% to 80% of calories, but only 4% of calories come from polyunsaturated fatty acids. The modern diet that's being taught is the exact opposite, and it's making us sick and loads us up on carbohydrates and tells us that that's healthy. And if you think there's a problem, take this pill and exercise, and you'll be all right. Where's the education about good fats, and what are they? Good fats are butter, beef tallow, lamb tallow, lard, chicken, goose, and duck fat, cold-pressed olive oil, sesame oil, and flax oil. Tropical oils that include coconut oil and palm oil, and fish liver oils such as cod liver oil. How many of these foods do you eat? And why aren't they a part of our daily diet? And there's more. Salt, which is supposedly so bad for us, has had all the magnesium and trace minerals removed and contains aluminum-based additives. And no one brings up the fact that the traditional salt production involved the simple evaporation of seawater, and that this type of salt was rich in these minerals. We need salt for protein digestion, carbohydrate digestion, development of the brain, adrenal function, and cellular metabolism. Big companies want you focusing on the tree, so you miss the forest. Are you awake yet?
Today's medical model implies that some bullet or material agent is the solution to overcoming man's woes. It is the incorrect model of the human body. In fact, the following is a recent commentary from a social scientist at Harvard University. He made the comment that the pain, dysfunction, disability, and anguish resulting from technical medical intervention now rivals the morbidity due to traffic and industrial accidents and even war-related activities, making the impact of modern medicine one of the most rapidly spreading epidemics of our time.
It gets worse. Even though we know a pill won't fix us, and we want to make a change, how our foods are processed makes it difficult to improve. Most of our meats are from confined animals that aren't allowed to live naturally, and we genetically enhance the animals and their foods to become more productive. All these things have an effect, and we are paying for it now, and will continue to pay for it in our future. But it doesn't stop there. There are companies determined to control the world's food supply, with 100% of all commercial seeds genetically modified and patented. What looks natural may not be natural. These same companies push soy products as healthy, but they're produced using many chemicals at high temperatures and pressures, which destroy essential amino acids. And one of the most startling things is that this is the basic ingredient in soy infant formula and many imitation foods.
Even the formulas we now feed infants is wreaking havoc on the health of our children and sowing the seeds of premature disease and degeneration. Attention deficit disorder, autism, and a host of other childhood diseases seems to be the result of a politically correct dietary or the accepted diet of the 21st century.
Everything we have thought and everything we think is true, we must now rethink. The problem is our diet and the foods we eat, and it's making us sick.
Hypertension disease affects over 50% of the senior female population and over 34% of the men in the Bahamas. A poor and ineffective health care model is at the bottom of this health crisis. The primary school education system has failed the Bahamian people. Inappropriate lifestyle habits are deteriorating the entire physical and moral fabric of a once strong, disease-free, and powerful people. The rapid movement from an agricultural society to a society that is ignoring the very roots from which it came is producing the disastrous results you are witnessing in these dreadful statistics.
The statistics are staggering, and they're only getting worse.
Women between the ages of 65 and 74 have a 25.5 incidence of diabetes. Think of it. 1 out of 4 people having diabetes in their most productive and potentially creative years.
Modern society has turned its attention away from a healthy heart to degenerative disease, and we must ask ourselves what we're going to do about it. Are you ready to change your mind?
The powers to be, the large food processing corporations and pharmaceutical companies, do not want you to have this information for obvious and apparent reasons: profit and power. First of all, the answer to the cause of the diseases of civilization is already known and available. The cure is available not through some bullet or magical potion, but is realized only when each of us begins to understand how these diseases made their way into our lives. Only then can we begin to live our lives with the truths and disciplines necessary to live a long and productive life.
There is hope, but it's going to take discipline and courage on our part. We'll have to be like some countries that will not receive genetically modified foods, and will need to educate ourselves and learn to become responsible for our own health, and force our governments to recognize the problem. We must show our government we can think for ourselves.
It seems that we as human beings are no longer capable of being responsible for anything. At least this is what is being implied when we must take a drug for whatever ails us. It seems that providing a drug solution for every conceivable problem has become the norm. Is all okay because the side effects and warnings are fully disclosed? We told you so.
We told you so is no longer an excuse, and we must get away from a treatment or drug to solve our problems.
Provide a drug for every conceivable challenge. If you can't sleep, take XYZ drug. Not enough energy? No problem. Take this. If you feel depressed, tell your doctor about whatever the currently advertised favorite is. And here's the perfect answer for when the time is just right. And your children are labeled as dysfunctional if they don't fit a perfectly politically correct norm. So let's medicate them with the latest upper or downer.
Many of our health problems can be fixed if we go back to the basics. The wisdom of our past should not be discarded, but embraced, and it's a process that starts from the inside out and takes personal responsibility.
If a change is to be made, it must be made at the root. Additionally, an awareness of what constitutes good health needs to be identified and held up as a model to emulate. Ignorance of our true health condition cannot continue. If you are overweight, recognize what that means and take appropriate action. If not for yourself, do it for your children and the generations to follow. Most of the focus today is on the treatment of disease, and the most current established recommended preventative measures are certainly missing the mark.
The key to living a regenerative lifestyle free from the diseases of modern civilization lies in understanding our natural traditions. Although all but lost, a few courageous scientists have done extensive research to uncover the truth about what dietary principles have kept mankind alive for a millennia. One such individual is Dr. Weston A. Price, a dentist and an anthropologist, author of the foremost Bible on nutritional science, Nutrition and Physical Degeneration. Dr. Weston Price is a true visionary, far ahead of his peers of the day. Even today, modern science and technology cannot find answers to the scourges of modern degenerative disease, something that Price discovered in the 1930s, over 75 years ago. Price was both puzzled and concerned why dental disease was and is so rampant among so-called civilized nations, and why the same diseases were not prevalent among so-called savages or indigenous people of the world. He set out on a mission to discover the truth. His findings are truly stranger than fiction. Price travelled the globe in the early 1930s and spent over 10 years living with the various indigenous people. This was at a time when travel to certain regions of the world was extremely difficult. He travelled to the isolated and modernised Swiss, Gaelics, Eskimos, North American Indians, Melanesians, Polynesians, Africans, Australian Aborigines, New Zealand Maoris, Torres Strait Islanders, and Peruvian Indians. Dr. Price carefully measured the prevalence and incidence of tooth decay wherever he travelled and kept meticulous records. He found with uniform regularity that these people, whether Eskimos in the Arctic, Aborigines and Maori in Australia and New Zealand, or people in remote parts of Switzerland, different parts of Africa and Polynesia, they all had little to no dental disease. What was also remarkable was that they were not yet affected by other diseases such as diabetes, heart problems, cancer, or arthritis. They had somehow escaped these diseases that modern man was beginning to experience at an alarming rate. What were they doing in their innate wisdom that had escaped more educated, civilized countries of the world? The discovery he made was foods of commerce, white man's foods like sugar, flour, canned goods, and vegetable oils, when introduced to cultures who had never had disease, began to have tooth decay, then rheumatoid arthritis and tuberculosis, and after a few years, cancer. Today, over 75 years later, genetically modified foods and a vast array of chemical fertilizers are needed, as the soil is so depleted it can no longer support healthy plant life. This is compounded by a modern set of pressures and challenges that are stressing our bodies and our neuroimmunoendocrine systems beyond their physical capacity. The following stories illustrate how old traditions not only affected people's health, but the moral fabric of their cultures. Our first story takes us high in the Swiss Alps in 1931, where Dr. Price found a remote valley. Until just a few months before, when a tunnel had been built, the villages in the valley had been inaccessible most of the year because of heavy snow, so the people had always lived on their indigenous foods. Price learned that there were no policemen, no jails, no doctors, no dentists, and no need for any of them. Meticulous records had been kept for many years about births and deaths in the valley. Price discovered that there had never been a single death from tuberculosis. That's truly amazing, because in those years, tuberculosis was the leading cause of death throughout the world, including the rest of Switzerland. Another study of the health and vigor of people living on traditional foods was done by a group of Soviet scientists and doctors who examined large numbers of old people in Georgian Russia in the 1970s. This is an area that's renowned for the strength and vigor of its old people. The doctors could find no evidence of the usual chronic diseases in the hundreds of people they studied. No heart disease, no cancer, no intestinal problems, no diabetes, and none of the marked mental decline so typical in cultures eating refined foods. We've gone to some length to make the point that diet and disease are intimately related, and that so-called primitive diets are associated with freedom from modern diseases. Now I'm going to describe the principles of that diet, as they were studied and understood by Weston Price. His answer, based on his careful observations, is that two different groups of food were considered absolutely essential in every culture throughout the world. These two groups are, number 1, seafood, fish and shellfish, and number 2, meats, especially organ meats from wild animals or grass-fed domestic animals. A third group was considered essential in the few cultures that kept dairy animals, and that group was milk, cheese, and butter from grass-fed animals. This is confusing for many people. We've been told by the processed food industry, by the supposed scientists they employ, and by the media they advertise in, that animal fats are bad for us. Let's set aside their propaganda and look at it objectively. Let us put it in a common sense way. It all depends on the quality of the animal. That's to say that the quality of the food that comes from an animal depends on the quality of the animal's life. The animal's food and environment completely determines the quality of the food that comes from the animal. The fatty part of all these foods carries essential nutrients. These foods, together with fresh organic vegetables and fruits, and in some cultures whole grains, constitute the primitive diet. What emerges is that it's not animal fats that are causing our modern problems. It's refined foods. We actually suffer from a lack of the nutrients our ancestors got from healthy animal fats. Let me emphasize the power of a simple program carefully followed. We suggest that most people eat mostly fresh vegetables, both raw in salads and cooked, an organic source of animal proteins such as fish and shellfish, meat, fowl, eggs, yogurt, raw milk, and certain other high-quality dairy foods. Complement these foods with a little fruit and small amounts of whole grain foods. Use extra virgin olive oil, raw apple cider vinegar, butter oil when available, and good quality sea salt to flavour your foods. For people with a taste for it, undercooked or raw animal foods from healthy animals works wonders. Applying the principles we've described will allow each of us to individualize a diet based upon our needs, goals, likes, and dislikes. When the basics are successfully applied, all sorts of chronic problems start to clear up. We estimate that over 90% of the problems in at least 90% of the people will either markedly improve or outright disappear. Another important thing to realize about these diets is that we use the plural diets to emphasize that this is not one diet. Every person's diet should be different. It's the principles that remain the same for all of us. Each of us need to apply those principles to ourselves in a unique way when it comes to choosing foods from day to day.
The lifestyle that most people are embracing is conducive to early degeneration. The goal here is to provide a healthy lifestyle model that can be gradually integrated into each family, community, city, and country. A model that embraces healthy lifestyle patterns must begin at the elementary school level and be supported by the parents and community. New agricultural-based business and industry needs to be promoted and supported. The foundational source of independence for the Bahamas comes from natural resources that are waiting to be utilized. When your political leaders walk the talk and begin to look at the root cause of this modern disease crisis and have the foresight to make changes at the root level, then and only then will the Bahamian people begin to realize dynamic health, followed by an era of unprecedented prosperity. For more information on learning the dynamics of a healthy lifestyle, you can go to www.agefreebody.org.
You're never too old to start living, so learn the necessary dynamics to design your own age-free body at www.agefreebody.org. That's www.agefreebody.org. We can help you conquer the challenge of better living. Live your life with more energy and appreciate the special moments that better health brings. Come visit us at www.agefreebody.org. We're here to help.